Hi guys, my name is Darby and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Just like the title says, today we are going to be baking. Some of you said you'd like to see my baking process and I figured what better time to start than now. Today I'm going to be making for you potato chip cookies, which is a recipe of my grandfather's, and sadly he is not doing very well. But it is a common thing in my family to show love and affection with homemade baked goods or a home-cooked meal. So I'm going to be baking his recipe, sharing it with you guys as a way to honor him and carry on his legacy. And I think that's a pretty cool thing. So before we begin the baking process, there's 2 steps I need you to go ahead and do right now. I need you to preheat your oven to 350 degrees, and I need you to stick 2 or 3 forks in your freezer. I know, it sounds crazy, but please stick some forks in your freezer and it'll all make sense when we get to that step. I'm also going to go ahead and run through the ingredients right now so that you can pause the video, go collect them, or go to the store if you'd like to bake along with me. So you're going to need any flour of your choosing. I'm just using regular all-purpose flour right now. You're going to need confectioner sugar. You're going to need plain white sugar. You're going to need pure vanilla extract. You're going to need a rolling pin, potato chips. Any plain brand of your choosing is fine. I have hers and I have the Ripples. I feel like they hold up better in the baking process. You'll see why in a little while. And you're gonna need an entire pound of butter. Trust me, they're wonderful, but they're not for the faint of heart. Your first step for these cookies is to take your entire pound of butter and soften it. You want it softened but not fully melted. You're going to add that to whatever bowl or mixer you'll be using. You're gonna combine the butter with 1 cup of regular granulated sugar, and you're gonna cream that together until it's super fluffy. Do not skip this step, do not cut it down. Definitely give it a few good minutes of mixing together before you move on to the next step. Once your butter and sugar look like this, you're ready to move on to the next step. For this next step, there's a couple methods you can use. If you have a mortar and pestle and wanna use it, feel free. I tend to use a Ziploc bag and a rolling pin. You're gonna have to eyeball the first part of this next step. We're trying to end up with 1/2 cup of crushed potato chips. The finer the better. Putting them in a Ziploc bag. If you were just watching me drop a chip, no you didn't. Seal up the bag, get a bunch of the air out of it, and we're gonna crush them, which is the fun part. Use any method to crush that you like. I just find that this is most effective for me. Once you're happy with how fine the crumb is, we're going to transfer it into a measuring cup so we make sure we get exactly 1/2 cup. Once it's in your measuring cup, you have to warm the potato chips. That is the secret to making this recipe work. If they go into the batter cold, they don't release as much oil and the flavor doesn't mix as well into the batter. They also have to go in exactly at this step, right after the butter and sugar are creamed, before the flour and anything else goes in. So I'm gonna warm these potato chips and we're gonna add them into this batter. I heat my potato chips up in the microwave. About 20 to 30 seconds is the optimal range. If you heat them up too much, they actually will burn, which kind of ruins the taste of the cookie. You're gonna go ahead and now incorporate this and give it a few minutes to mix around, let the oils mingle with that butter and sugar mixture. Make sure you do scrape down the sides of this step so that every bit of batter gets incorporated with the potato chips. Next, you're gonna go in with your pure vanilla extract. If you are following my grandfather's recipe, he says 2 teaspoons. I say there are 2 things you measure with your heart, not a spoon, and that's garlic and vanilla. So, measure with your heart. The last step of making the batter for these cookies is to add 3.5 cups of finely sifted flour into the mix. And to inevitably make a mess all over your kitchen counters. You'll notice that there are some standard baking ingredients missing from this recipe. This recipe doesn't call for any eggs, any baking soda, or any baking powder. It's because we don't want a leavening agent in this cookie. We want them very thin and very crisp. If you don't want you and your kitchen floor to be wearing more flour than goes in the batter, add it in very slowly. That's gonna get cut. Do as I say and not as I do, and add your flour slowly, please. Now that you have your batter complete, it's time to scoop these into cookies and get them in the oven. I will be using a 1-inch cookie scoop, but you can also use a tablespoon just the same. Once you have an entire tray of cookies scooped out, it's time to show you why we put forks in the freezer earlier. You're gonna grab them one at a time so the others stay cold, and you're gonna use the pronged part to push down on the center of the cookie until it comes out with little lines in it. Because they were in the freezer, the cold keeps the dough from sticking to them, but when they start to stick, you run and grab a different fork. I usually put about 3 forks in the freezer and re-chill them every time. Your cookies before going into the oven should look like this. You can see the distinctive fork marks in each cookie. This encourages the dough to stay flat and thin so it can get crispy during the bake. You're gonna bake these cookies for 10 to 15 minutes because every oven is a little different. I start mine at 10 and check them every minute after that. If you're doing 2 trays at once, you're going to want to rotate the top and bottom tray about halfway through the bake. But this tray is ready to go in. Okay, these are ready to come out of the oven. For the bake on these, you're just looking for the golden brown ring around the outside. That's how you know they're done. You're gonna let these completely cool on the tray so they will finish cooking here. While they're still hot and fresh out of the oven though, you're going to dust with powdered sugar. I put mine through a sieve just to make sure it's super fine. You will not be able to see this in a few minutes because this will melt right into the cookie, which gives it this nice little sugar crust on top. You can see on the ones I put sugar on first, it's already melting into the cookie. That's what you want. When they're ready, you'll move them to a wire rack and dust again with powdered sugar, this time when they're cool enough so the sugar won't melt and you'll get that pretty white powdered sugar classic look on the top of your cookies. My oven tends to run a little hot, so even though it's set at 350, it's probably slightly higher, so 10 minutes was perfect for these cookies. But again, start your oven at 10 minutes and go from there. If it needs more, give it more. Just keep a close eye on them and remember to look for that golden brown ring on them. These cookies are super delicate, so be careful when you move these onto a cooling rack. We're gonna give these one more dust of powdered sugar so they have that classic, pretty, white sugared look. And there you have it. A potato chip cookie. Let's try one. These cookies are so good. They're crisp and they just melt in your mouth. Probably because there's a pound of butter in there. I hope you guys like this recipe and I hope you guys like this video. If you try potato chip cookies, please let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. And as always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe below. I'll see you next week. Bye.